Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we return as Tottenham Hotspur make their second signing of this summer transfer window. And we'd like to have returning guests on this show to bring you all the insight, all the knowledge and the facts that are going to come with regards to Spurs' second signing of the summer. Joining me as always, I'm joined by my co-host. You're going to see a lot of him these days. I've got the wonderful Matty Hayes alongside me. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. How are you? Love to be back on Last Word on Spurs.
Lovely to be back. And yeah, I just sit in the seat now and wait for you to send me a link to come on here, Ricky. I don't do anything else at this point. It's just waiting to see who the next player we'll be talking about or the next incredible guest we'll be talking to. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about a player that I'm hoping can be the present and the future of Tottenham Hotspur.
Amazing. Matt, we love you for it. We're only just getting started here on Last Word on Spurs. Can I just say we're joined by a very, very special guest to this show. And he didn't know that before coming on to here, that I do keep an eye on what happens down at Elland Road, because I've always said that Leeds United are a club that, in my opinion, are a Premier League football club. You know, they're an established side that I think for many out there would associate Leeds as being a Premier League side. And I'm sure if he has it his way, it won't be too long till they are back in the Prem. So it gives me my absolute delight and pleasure to welcome to Last Word on Spurs, special guest for this evening. For anybody that are unsure and need some convincing around Spurs' new summer signing, I'm delighted to be welcoming Michael from the Square Ball podcast, big Leeds United podcast. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. How are you, and are you well?
Not so bad, apart from you stealing our players, but I'm good. I feel like you're putting a lot of pressure on me to say I've got to try and alleviate the fears of the Spurs fan base, but he's good, is the short answer. He's good.
Michael, we've been trying to do it for about 7-8 years. So look, if you can't do it, we certainly can't do it. Thank you so much for joining us. And like I say there, we are here to bring you that reaction to Spurs making their second signing of the summer as Archie Gray does become a Tottenham Hotspur player. We're going to go right from the very, very top if we can in regards to the statements that came out with relation to the player. And interestingly, beforehand, we heard news today that even Liverpool, Borussia Dortmund and Newcastle were amongst the clubs that were regularly keeping an eye on this Elland Road star. But Spurs stole a march and have confirmed the signing of Archie Gray from Championship side Leeds United on a 6-year deal. It follows an incredible breakout season for the player in which Spurs did win that race for the 18-year-old. But it wasn't easy. As we know, Brentford collapsed at the 11th hour on Sunday morning for a move, and Spurs stepped in and wrapped up a deal that could cost anywhere between 25 to 30 million, with Joe Rodon joining Leeds United on a permanent deal. We know Gray has penned a 6-year contract at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Our understanding is there is no sell-on clause included in that deal to sign Archie Gray. And we know it's a player that flourished in Leeds' promotion push, subsequently making 52 appearances in all competitions, coming to the attention, as I mentioned, of a host of top clubs. But Spurs have got their man, and it's a player that, of course, Michael knows very, very well. We're going to get his insight into it. But first, Matt, if I can come to you to open up. Tottenham have made their second signing of the summer. It is Archie Gray. Thoughts for you, Matt, now that deal is completed?
There's not a negative thought in my head with this signing, quite frankly. It's a lot of money. He's the fourth most expensive 18-year-old in footballing history, and the most expensive in Tottenham Hotspur history, which says a lot. If you look at the trio there for the viewers on YouTube above him, it's Endrick, Rodrigo, and Vinicius Jr. all to Real Madrid are the only 18-year-olds who've cost more than him. And if you look at the history, I wouldn't reference the recent history as much, but the kind of prolonged history under Daniel Levy and Enoch, spending this sort of money doesn't happen very often, especially for a kid at this age. So I think the fee alone, well, I can understand a negative view on it for people who aren't too familiar with the player, but it just goes to show the trust that Ange Postecoglou in particular, but also Johan Lang and that recruitment department have had in him. And I think anyone who's watched him play will be able to wax lyrical about the qualities that he has, the experienced head on young shoulders, not just in a footballing sense, but also with the leadership that he's shown in that Leeds team. We've all seen at this point the image of him, I think it was during the playoffs, having a talk with his teammates and trying to, there it is, just being that leader that they needed in that moment. And he's a Spurs player now, and he's been added to a squad that's developing a very, very nice balance with youth, with experience, with raw technical ability, with everything that we're kind of looking for. So yeah, I'm absolutely delighted that we've managed to get this one over the line.
Yeah, I really don't want to rub salt into the wounds here for Michael, but before I bring Michael in, if I can in a second, Gray will wear the number 14 shirt for Tottenham. It's a number made famous by the likes of David Ginola, Luka Modric, of course, and worn in recent years by Joe Rodon and Ivan Perisic. It's a number that, it's not an easy one to wear. So, I mean, again, we'll see how he takes to that. Now, the Leeds United statement, which I felt was quite interesting, which I want to get Michael's take on it, was Leeds confirmed that he has completed a permanent move to Spurs after Spurs met a release clause that was triggered by the club's failure to get promoted at the first attempt. Everyone at Leeds United is heartbroken to see one of their own depart and would like to thank Archie for all of his efforts and professionalism. Archie went on to say from his perspective that he can't thank everyone at Leeds United enough for the past 11 years, from all the coaches that he's had from when he first came at 7 years old to the coaching staff as of today. He's enjoyed every single second of the football club. He reserved special praise for Daniel Farke for trusting him during the previous season and giving him the opportunity to play and teaching him so much about the game, in which to that he's forever grateful. He went on to praise the Leeds United fans and says that he's got friends for life at Elland Road. And he said for Harry as well, his younger brother, for the years to come, he's pretty sure crosses will path again on that point. Michael, I want to bring you in if I can. Give me your reaction, if you can, to Archie Gray leaving Leeds United. As a Leeds United fan, I can see online from Leeds it's quite a sad day to a player that I know you had genuinely really, really high hopes for.
But we pretty much hoped it wouldn't be him. I think people were doing the maths in their head. It's like, well, okay, there's going to be PSR stuff we're going to have to comply with, but you're going, well, Nonto wanted out last summer, probably him. Somerville has got no attachment to the club, had another brilliant season, Championship Player of the Year, 20 goals. You can see there'll be interest there. Maybe him, maybe Meslier. You're kind of working through your head the people we can get rid of. And Gray was, I guess, to the bottom of that list because you just want, I suppose you want a Gray in the team if you've got one available at Leeds. It's just there's such heritage there that it had, as well as just as a footballer, it gives you a nice feeling, doesn't it, to go to a game and feel like there's like a bit of history on the pitch. So the feeling was sell anyone but him, but then when you put him up on that list of most expensive teenagers, you see the deal and you I suppose you've got to accept it's a hell of a lot of money for someone who is not as yet really achieved anything in the game. He's got a huge amount of potential, had a very good season, but for the money, I suppose it's all right. I think people were more annoyed actually the day before when it seemed he was going to Brentford because, as you said, there were a host of top clubs after him, and then I would go kind of and Brentford, and it did feel a little bit like, as much as Brentford are an established Premier League team, they've been in there as long as Leeds have in the last couple of decades. There's still a bit of you goes, I thought better for Gray. I felt like he'd go to a top 6 team or Dortmund or Juventus or someone would take a gamble on him. Spurs, fine. It's a good move for him. And I think it's a team where, depending on how Postecoglou plays it, I think he's got a chance of getting some game time at least. Depending on, I don't know what you think of your existing midfield options, but I think he's probably gonna, if not start games, get some decent minutes there. But as a whole, I feel it's caused quite a bit of falling out amongst Leeds fans. Really, as it seems to be the gist of it online. A lot of people are coming at it from we've got to be realistic. Of course, they're going to take it. It's 40 million quid. A lot of people are going, I can't believe they've done this. We should have sold the club, kept Archie Gray, sort of thing as the last resort, sell absolutely everything apart from him. And what's the point of supporting a team if you can't get to watch your favourite young player for more than a single season? So, and I think there's validity in all of those points. I suppose I dropped somewhere quite boringly in the middle where you've got to shrug and go, this is just the reality of modern football, and it's kind of shit. But teams with money just come and take all the nice stuff.
Yeah, on that point, if I can, I'm sure Matt's got questions for you as well. The one I want to ask you, Michael, straight off the cuff is, what made Archie Gray so special for Leeds United fans? What was that connection that you felt that has led to, like you say, that falling out online, that frustration around fans that they're seeing such a talented youngster leave the club? What makes him special?
I mean, we've not seen him in his proper position for the most part, but I think you just can tell from the first time you see him control a football and turn with it and look up, you can just see he's just brilliant. He's got an awareness and a composure on the ball, which I think you don't see very often. So just being able to, as well, you've got to remember last season we came off having Rasmus Christensen at right back for a lot of it, who was an absolute headless chicken, who would just leather the ball down the line, never knew where his man was, would just cross the ball to no one, absolutely zero composure. At the start of this season, we had a 17-year-old lad come in playing right back, and you were just like, God, this is so refreshing. Like someone who actually looks after the ball and has got, even at 17, has got the poise to take a moment and look and pick a pass or take it past a man or receive it in awkward positions, like, and take responsibility for it in often quite difficult areas when you're passing around the back and stuff. He just seemed like he was playing his 100th game, not his first 10 games for us. So I think even though we've not seen him in probably his proper position, I think the bits we've seen of him just show a level of maturity and composure that I think is just completely rare in a teenager. I mean, we've particularly, I suppose, in a team that's at the start of the season as well was very much in its infancy. He wasn't coming into an established team; it was still being thrown together. There were still players being transferred out, transferred in, and he was there, and he just seemed like a very, very calm presence in there, which is, I think, unusual for a 17-year-old.
You mentioned the Gray heritage that there is at Leeds, and I think it's something that everybody knows about. We spoke about it on Sunday as well. But when did you realise that Archie Gray was as special as he was? Was there always an expectation there because of who came before him, or was there a particular moment where you kind of realised that this kid is the real deal?
Well, it was first talked about a couple of years ago. He was training the first team when he was 15, 16, and he was taken on pre-season the year before. It was John McGinn actually put in a really horrible tackle and damaged his ankle, so he would have probably made his debut at 16 rather than 17 had he not picked up that injury. But there was talk of him for 2 or 3 years, I guess, before we even saw him in. He was always playing levels up in terms of under 18s. He was in there when he was 15, and so you always everyone knew he was in the pipeline. But yeah, and his brother as well is another one who's a couple of years younger and another one who has massively high expectations. But on the Gray side of things, I mean, his dad was an all right sort of winger for Leeds. He was not truthfully brilliant. He was kind of high hopes for a brief period and was sold. It's weird, we sold him as a winger, then Neil Warnock seemed to turn him into like a big traditional number 9 at some point. He came back and we were like, oh, different guy to the one that left. But then, yeah, obviously he's got his granddad, Frank Gray, went on played for us in the 70s, played for Forest, and then Eddie Gray is his great uncle, but Eddie Gray is as near to Leeds United royalty as it gets. You know, he's played for us over multiple decades. He's managed us a couple of times. He's been a youth coach. He's done media stuff. He's just like, there should really be a statue of him, is my opinion, for Eddie Gray. Like he's untouchably brilliant and just a lovely, lovely guy. So to see him in the stand watching him play, it created such a nice, warm feeling. Did the whole family vibe to it. So I'll be sad to lose that.
I'm interested to know from you, Michael, do you look at that player and think he's Premier League ready? I think that's a question that many maybe will know amongst the Spurs fan base, that obviously Leeds' ideal, preference last season was to get to the Premier League, right? I mean, I know there was a massive disappointment when you didn't get there. So when you look at a player like that and his ability, do you look at him and think, right, that's a Premier League player right now for you?
Time will tell on it. I don't know if you saw the game we played against Chelsea. Admittedly, it was a slightly pieced together Chelsea side because it was a cup game. It wasn't kind of full strength. But he took that by the scruff of the neck, I thought, and ran it pretty well from midfield. And I think he was playing probably more in his natural position there as well. He was certainly midfield as opposed to a right back. I think he's got the maturity that he will settle into it very, very quickly. It's in the same. You never know until you try it. But I remember seeing Jude Bellingham for the first time playing. We had a ridiculous game that finished 5-4 at Birmingham, but that was the first time I'd seen him play. And was watching him like, oh, he's good. I've never heard of him. And then the commentator mentioned he was 16, and it was like, whoa, that's ridiculous. But it was literally the first time I'd ever seen him play, and I was just shockingly good for his age and to be playing in a game like that. And I think Gray has done that to an extent in that he doesn't seem to have shown any fear in games. Like he doesn't seem intimidated by older players, and sometimes you can see. I mean, the Championship's quite there's a few more traditional English types in there who'll just try to boot people. They'll like think it's a young lad, we'll try and bully him. And I don't think he's being bullied at any point. And I think he can do it. I actually do. I think in some ways the Brentford move might have been slightly better for him. A move with lower pressure, more minutes.
Yeah,
going into Spurs, I worry you might eat him alive a bit. If he's, I don't know exactly what the vibe is at Spurs, but if he's it the sort of crowd that if he misplaces like half a dozen passes in his first few games, people are going to be like, just sell him. He needs to go out on loan, give him some experience.
Probably. We'll do it, Matt. Probably.
I feel like there's a faction of people like that within every fan base. Maybe the ones in the Spurs fan base are just a little bit louder than others, but I think the vast majority will have the patience that he deserves.
On that point, though, you just bring up there, Michael. I said this on the previous show that me and Matt did. I look at the Leeds United fan base, very similar, and tell me if I'm wrong, the Spurs fan base, where that's a demanding set of supporters. They urge that you give absolutely everything on the pitch. And I think you all know it, Elland Road, same as the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium or even back at White Hart Lane, that is not an easy ground to play in because you've got the fans right on top of you that are literally breathing down your neck on every single pass. So, for Gray to have become such a pivotal part already of what Leeds were building, and the fans take to him so quickly shows you there's a player there because he's handled that pressure. And I think 52 games last season shows you he has got the ability to handle tough crowds, tough games, tough moments. And not being funny, as you know, the Championship, better than us, every week upon week, the games in there are real tough, strenuous tasks to get results. And I just hope that is what's going to stand him in good stead. And we use that word fearless. And the point you mentioned actually about that Chelsea game, I've dug out actually what the Leeds live player ratings report was him after the game, and it said a performance beyond his years. Not the first time this season it has felt like he's come of age, but in this company to run a second half at Stamford Bridge at 17 was pretty special. Breathtaking talent, never seemed phased or rushed by anything in the busiest part of the pitch. Instrumental to United's second half renaissance, which against the Chelsea side that we're talking I spent around 220 billion, of course. I mean, how impressive was he that night?
He was great, and I think the fact of running it and the time he seems to have on the ball, it's just basically the sign of a good player. There's nothing more. You could probably break it down in more complicated terms, but I guess from Spurs' point of view, this is ridiculously high bar to set for him. But someone like Modric, who you just see on the ball, and even at the age he is now, just never seems rushed. Just can always find a bit of space. First touch is always perfect, so can always move it to the right side of the man. Play the pass. Maybe doesn't have quite we've not seen yet. I don't think the passing range of someone like Modric, but he just has an awful lot of class about him. I think is the overriding kind of image I'm left with of Archie Gray is just him striding in space and looking a bit of it's a cliche, but a bit of a Rolls Royce, if you know what I mean.
One of the things that's impressed me most about him is you often hear people speak as though a player plays as if he can see the pitch from above, and as if he can see the entire game unfolding. And Gray, he just always seems to be able to make the right decision. There's a few clips I've even seen of him picking up the ball in his own box, and there's pressure coming from a couple of sides. There's a man closing him down, and like you said there, he doesn't seem rushed. He just knows little drop of the shoulder this way, I'll turn here. That's where the space is. And sometimes even when he gets into possession in midfield, he's just really clever in knowing which pass to play. Do I go long to a Somerville or a Nanto here, or do I keep possession and keep things ticking over in midfield? And I know he played a lot of last season at right back with the injuries, and he was almost shoehorned in there at the start of the season. But when he was in midfield, what kind of effect did he have on the entire way that Leeds were able to play football?
Well, I don't think the way our midfield set up in general actually suited him particularly well, because it was we tended to play for the most of the season with players available. We'd play with two quite deep line players, so there'd be Gruev or Kamara or Ampadu, who then dropped centre back when there were injuries. But it was generally the three of them, and they're all fairly sideways footballers. Like none of them run with it particularly. Whereas Gray, I think, is someone who will maybe pick it up deep and naturally run forward with it, or potentially, I don't know if he has a future playing further up the pitch. But for us, he generally was playing a deeper role. Towards the end of the season, in the away leg of the playoffs at Norwich, he was playing a bit more as a number 10. But that was a weird, cagey defensive game where it seemed both teams were just quite happy to be a draw. So I don't think we got to see enough of him in an attacking sense from that. So I think in a better system, I think you'd see more from him. And he didn't play that many games in midfield for us this season, in truth. I think it was, I think I'd say of those 50 games, I'd say at least probably 30 to 35 of them were right back. And it was he didn't tend to get a run in central midfield either. It was when someone was suspended, when someone was injured, he'd come in for a little bit. Or if someone had just gone out of form, we need to be a bit more defensive as in the playoffs. He dropped one of Ruter or Pirro, one of them was out of the team. He would occasionally play further forward, but for the most part, he never really got a run in midfield, which is, I guess, one of the shames, because I think if you're looking forward to a second year with the experience and the games at right back under your belt, almost as a grounding for it, it would have been nice to see a midfield actually based around him moving forward, I suppose.
Can I ask you, I mean, one of the key things we know in an Ange system, from our perspective, Michael, is that he wants players to play without fear. We've discussed that word already during this show, but also looking to move and pass the ball quickly. You've touched upon, I think Matt's also said there about, the visions that the player has in terms of the pictures in his head. Do you think the way Spurs want to play, I know you don't watch Spurs every week, but the way Tottenham want to play that kind of fast-paced, aggressive press football, do you think that is going to suit Archie in the long run?
I would say so, yeah, because I know it's not an exact replica of it, but we obviously have Bielsa, which has got, it seems to have a certain crossover with Ange's football. So, and there are certainly times when you see Gray and you think, if only we still had Bielsa here to kind of guide him at this point in his career, I think it would have been really good for him. So I think from that point of view, I could see it working for him. But it might take time, is the only thing. I don't know if it'll be instant for him. And having seen Leeds come Championship to Premier League, the step up is huge. Like you can make so many mistakes in the Championship and get away with it, whereas in the Premier League, if you do try and turn out of a difficult situation in midfield and give it the ball away, Mo Salah will just score. Whereas in the Championship, you get if you're against Plymouth or whatever, they'll try and cross it and miss. It's kind of you do get a lot more leeway on it. So that'll maybe take a little bit of getting used to. But I think he can adapt relatively quickly, would be my gut instinct on it.
I think from the player's perspective, and I'm sure many of the viewers are screaming this to their screens as well, but in terms of making those mistakes, it's something a lot of Tottenham players have actually spoken about this season, specifically Mickey Van Ven and James Maddison, where not that Postecoglou has encouraged them to make mistakes, but when they have made mistakes, he's encouraged them to keep trying the same thing. So there'll definitely be that fear there for Gray coming in and making mistakes like that. I don't think there's a better man in the dugout to be encouraging him and telling him to keep playing football the way he wants to play and the way he can play. And I actually saw a show that Patrick Bamford did on BBC Sounds with Joe Wilkinson, and he was speaking about how Archie Gray he's confident in his abilities but doesn't quite know just how good he is. He said Archie Gray has actually told the players in the dressing room in the past that his brother Harry is better than him. But I think Postecoglou could be the guy to maybe unlock that full confidence in a player like Gray, who, like Bamford says, maybe just doesn't actually realise how far his qualities go.
Until you sack him in November, of course.
Can I just say, Michael said that, not me. Michael said that, not me.
Are you happy? Are you still happy with Postecoglou out of interest? Is he kind of in for another season?
Oh yeah, I think we've been.
For three more.
We can't keep sacking managers. I mean, I make that joke, to be honest with you, Michael. I mean, there were concerns to me last season from set pieces, certain reoccurring elements that just weren't being addressed. That, again, I hope with a second season, with a decent summer, getting the right players in, which I think, again, is really key and fundamental why the fans are a little bit concerned at the moment. Because, again, I think had it been Gray following Eze, it might be a different reaction. Whereas now I think the situation around Spurs is that we're still waiting to see if they're going to go and get those primary key targets that have been mentioned. And I think for Gray, bless him, he comes after Spurs just extend Timo Werner's loan. I mean, I'm not sure that's the best way to follow any kind of move, Matt. Would you agree? It's difficult, isn't it? It's really difficult.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think, like Michael said, with the fans maybe turning on him quickly if things go wrong, Tottenham fans seem to hate transfers. I think everyone is turning into a Jason McGovern these days, where the transfer window is the worst 2 months of their lives. And I do feel as though the positivity at the moment is a little bit louder than the negativity. And again, like I said earlier, that I think the majority of people who aren't happy about this deal are looking at it as an 18-year-old for 40 million rather than Archie Gray for 40 million, because those two are extremely different prospects. So yeah, it's I think moving to a big club like this is never the easiest thing, but a Tottenham fan base that's up in arms about transfers definitely adds an interesting bit of spice to it all.
Yeah, I've got a couple more just quick fire ones for Michael. Can I just say, look, there's lovely comments coming through here from Michael saying, what a legend you are, coming on here after losing a key player. Obviously, we know how we all felt losing Harry Kane last summer and just the void it left for us. So, as I said, Mike, beforehand and off air, we can't thank you enough for coming on. Because, again, this gives us an insight that really, with no disrespect, no journalist, no other person can tell us other than a fan that watches this player week in, week out can give us. So it's a great insight for us to learn a bit about the player from someone that has watched him so close up week in, week out, that knowledge can't go amiss. So we can't thank you enough. And, I said to you actually off air, I think before we were doing this show, that I think for some Spurs fans, they've noticed obviously the correlation between someone like this and Jack Clarke. I mean, Jack Clarke was a player that came to Spurs with real genuine high hopes, a winger that was exciting, exhilarating. Some called him being the next star. Didn't quite work out for him. There were a number of mitigating factors for that. He walked into a club where Spurs were in the process of disposing with Mauricio Pochettino and veering towards Jose Mourinho. Probably not the greatest for any kind of player to join the club, given the uncertainty in and around the dressing room at that point. Tell me why you think, if you can, Michael, why this will be different in terms of those two players.
I think the move was definitely too soon for Jack Clarke. And I was on... it wasn't this Spurs podcast. It was a Spurs podcast, I think. I don't think it was you guys. Someone definitely invited me on and I spoke about Jack Clarke and they said, what do you think he'll do next year for us? And I said, I don't think he'll play him, was the short answer, because I didn't think he wasn't even starting for us at this point. We had, Jack Harrison was our left winger at the time and Bielsa was in and Bielsa preferred the consistency of Harrison and his work rate, and his overall contribution was essentially better. Clarke would come off the bench and he had a couple of very, very eye-catching performances off the bench, one against Villa around Christmas where he scored, and there was definitely a bit of a clamour to get him in. But then towards the end of that season, he had some sort of seizure on the bench at Borough, and then after that, it was kind of obviously an initial scare. He was fine. Some rumours that he just drank a load of Red Bull and it sent him a bit mad. But from that point on that season, he had very, very minimal impact actually, and then I think the money came in. I can't remember, it was like 12 million, 15 million, something like that you paid for him.
Might be a bit more. Yeah.
Was it? It wasn't as much as Gray, I know, but it was a lot of money.
Yep.
And then he came back to us on loan as well, and even on loan then I think it was half-hearted from all parties. I think we knew that he didn't really want to be here, and it's taken him time. I mean, he's found his feet now, and I think he'll probably get a good move again this summer, actually. I think he'll probably end up leaving Sunderland, but I wouldn't have said he was anywhere near the position of Archie Gray, and I don't think his ceiling is anything like as high either.
Even on top of that, I think the biggest challenge Jack Clarke had, definitely from a Tottenham perspective, is something where we don't have a comparison with Gray yet, because the first 3 months Clarke was at Tottenham, we were just out of a Champions League final, expecting to push on and become the success that Pochettino was supposed to make us. And by November, the man who brought him in was gone, and the whole team and club was in turmoil. But with regards to Archie Gray, I think it's important to, from an optimistic Tottenham fan perspective, to stay balanced, because I struggle with that when I get excited about signings. But what weaknesses can we expect from this player, Michael?
Does it sound ridiculous to say I don't think he's got any?
That's exactly what I wanted.
Music to our ears. Music to our ears, what?
He's not scored any goals, but none of our midfielders scored goals this year. This is, I'm saying about the setup of it, I think maybe not suiting him. It was only until the second leg of the playoffs that Gruev scored, and that was the first time any of our central midfielders had scored a goal this year. So there's obviously something weird in the setup for him. I suppose he's not maybe great in the air, but he's not terrible either, and he's not, for his age, he's obviously looked after himself, and he kind of does his gym work and stuff, and I think he seems reasonably bulky, I think, for quite a tall teenager. So I don't know. He's pretty good at everything. Like there's been a couple of times defensively, just odd games where a winger's had the better of him. Jack Clarke was one of them actually. Only for 45 minutes he kind of evened it up, but Jack Clarke and Liam Miller, who was at Preston, they both had good days against him. But that was at right back, and I don't think he's a right back as much as I think he was able to do a really good job there, because just intrinsically a very good player, so he can slot in a number of different positions. But he's really good. He's really good.
Mate, look, I can only just say we can't thank you enough for coming on, because, to have to describe a player like that you're losing, that's not easy. You know what I mean? Again, to sit here and say that you can't see any faults, and
we're used to it. It's fine. We've lost Lewis Cook, we've lost Fabian Delph, all the best players we've had. Aaron Lennon, you had him off us as well.
Yeah. Listen, I'll tell you what, if he's anywhere near what Aaron Lennon was for Tottenham in terms of how long he was at the club and what he gave us product-wise, I think a lot of us will be fairly happy. Aaron is definitely one of those that goes down in folklore for Spurs fans. Couple of quick fire ones for me, if you don't mind, Michael. I know we're conscious of time here. What position do you think he'll eventually settle on into his main one? We know primarily he's been seen as a midfielder. Is that what you see? Because I know he, again, has been operating at right back as well, fairly impressively. Where do you think he's going to end up for the rest of his career in his wholesale position?
Yeah, central midfield. I'm not entirely sure whether he naturally sits deeper or whether he's behind strikers. My instinct is that he probably is someone who will sit deep, collect the ball, and drive it forward. Is what I think his long-term future probably is, and he's someone equally who can fill in different positions. It wouldn't be surprising probably if he ends up playing some games at full-back for you this year. Like if an injury crisis, he'll end up getting in there and having a little run of games there as well. But I think long-term, he's got the vision he has and the composure. I think it seems to me to obviously shout a central midfielder.
Okay, and then a final one from me before I hand over to Matt. How will he get on, do you think, with the big stars in the dressing room? And I ask you that because, again, Leeds have got some fairly big stars in there, big egos, big voices. How do you think he's going to adapt to the likes of Christian Romero in that dressing room, Richarlison, Bentancur, dare I say, some of these players? Do you think he's going to take that in his stride, or how do you see him? Because like I say, it sounds crazy. When I see this kid on, X and Instagram, he's so young. It's a child. You know what I mean? And you look at this. It's a young kid. It's a young kid, right? It's a young kid. You can't forget that he is so young, 18 years of age.
It's funny, the pictures he's put on his Instagram account today. They're involved. They've kind of done the rounds, obviously, in the last season. But we've got Sam Byram back at Leeds now, and there are pictures of him being a mascot when he was 7 years old, with Sam Byram coming out to the pitch and stuff. So I don't think he'll be stressed by it because he's clearly been around that environment for a long time. And as I said, he was training with the Leeds first team as a 15, 16-year-old. So he was he's used to being around like proper established grown-up footballers. It's not like it's the first time he's going to have done it. So I think he'd be okay. And I think as well, the other thing is that he clearly applies himself very well. I don't think he's someone you're going to have. In fact, this is speaking of which, you loaned us Jed Spence this year as well, didn't you? Someone who you're going to have trouble with when there's going to be rumours of like all sorts going on in his private life. I think he's very, very well grounded. He's clearly got a family who have got his best interests at heart and will keep him on the straight and narrow. It seems like he's quite a model professional. So I think that will see him in good stead with the players as well. Because I think if more senior players can see someone coming in and not taking it seriously and thinking, I've got my big move, I've kind of made it, they will maybe not respect it. But I think he will just come in and probably work hard and improve, which is all people want to see for the most part.
I think from my end, I've no more questions. I just want to thank you, Michael, for giving us your time and your insight. And I hope it's been even a little bit therapeutic for you. I remember when Dele Alli left Spurs, very different situation for Ali. It was a player who naturally came to the end of his time at Tottenham, whereas for Gray, I know the opposite of that. But I was on an Everton channel speaking about it, and it was just a little bit therapeutic to me. And I can promise that we'll take care of him better than we did with Jack Clarke. I know he said, I think he did an interview with the PFA, and he said that after a game he likes to go to Sainsbury's for a red pesto gnocchi, and we've got a Sainsbury's in the stadium, so he'll be absolutely fine. He'll be fully taken care of.
You know what? Let's try and end it on a nice note for Michael. Let's ask him about Joe Rodon. It only feels right because they are getting a player in exchange. I say in exchange, you're spending the money for Joe Rodon, Michael, and a player that for Leeds United, I know he's a bit of a cult hero. So I'm going too far there in terms of that first season at a club. He joins Leeds United on a 4-year deal. As we understand, he's rejected Premier League interest from Ipswich, from Leicester, and Brentford to go back to the Championship, which is a lot about how much he wanted to play for Leeds United, and a player that really, as I've said, struck the chord amongst fans last season. How happy are you to be having Joe Rodon as part of this deal or separate to this deal? The fact that I know it's a player that you, as we spoke off air, are delighted to see back at Elland Road next season.
Yeah, he was my top target for the summer. If we could have said can have anyone kind of within realistic boundaries. I thought actually he was potentially not realistic because there was this talk of Premier League interest, and for the most part, that's what a player will go for. But he was brilliant last year. I mean, he was the square ball player of the season. Was, as much as I've just spoken at length about how great Gray was, I think actually Gray was kind of third or fourth on that list, which just kind of reflects the impact he had. He was brilliant as a 17-year-old, and it was great to have him in there, but he was not in position, and he was not always instrumental to our best performances, whereas Rodon was very, very consistent for us. And I think to do it on loan as well is really good, because we've seen so many times over the years you get a player coming on loan and you can see they're not that bothered, whereas Rodon was kind of body on the line. He seems to just have like a bleeding nose or lip every single game. Just seems to lives with a slightly confused look on his face. But he was brilliant for us. So I think everyone's delighted to see him back. But he never really got much of a chance for you guys, did he?
No, I think that's fair to say. I mean, again, at the same time, he came back for the odd pre-season, didn't really ever get a look in. So look, I think from all of us here, we definitely wish Joe Rodon all the best. Michael, finally, for anyone that is craving to know where they can find Leeds coverage and keep an eye on maybe Joe Rodon as to what comes in his career, where can they do that, Michael? Where can they find the Square Ball?
We're on YouTube. Thesquareball.net is the website. We're on any way you can get your podcasts. Just find us on there. So it should be another interesting season. I suppose I'm optimistic, but we'll see. We've still got. This is very early in the transfer window for us. I think we've probably got another 5 or 6 to go out and about another 9 or 10 to come in. So it'll be a very changed starting lineup, I think, come the start of the season. Well,
listen, mate. I'm sure Matt will echo here. We can't give you anything more than just the very, very best for the upcoming season. We can't thank you enough for coming on and give us a bit more insight into what Spurs have acquired to be their second signing of the summer. Matty, I'm sure you echo those words, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really do appreciate your time, Michael, and hopefully Joe Rodon will have a successful season with you guys next season.
Love that.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Michael, and the very best of luck for the upcoming season.
Cheers. You too.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much there. There you go. Michael there from the Square Ball, very, very kindly giving his insight there into, of course, the nature of him losing for them a real generational talent, in his words there, of course, in terms of Archie Gray. For Spurs, they have got their man. What we are going to do, we are going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners on audio. We'll be discussing the pull of Ange Postecoglou on this one and the inside story as to how Spurs got that deal done. Do not go anywhere. We're back after this short break for our listeners on audio. For our watching audience, we've got nearly over 3,500 of you watching us live. We can't thank you enough for all your support for the show. I'm joined by Matty Hayes, who were just joined by the brilliant Michael from the Square Ball. For our listeners on audio, wasn't he great? Wasn't he superb there, Michael? Very kindly giving us so much insight there into Archie Gray and what we can all expect to come. But look, Matt, we'll come on to some of the quotes that we've had from Archie in regards to Ange Postecoglou and how he persuaded him that Spurs would be the right club for him. And he also admitted his excitement at playing for Ange Postecoglou as well, which we can't get away from. Now, we got reports actually late last night from Fabrizio Romano that he was excited to go to Tottenham and Ange wants to trust the project with young players. Himself, he said that when Spurs came, I had the opportunity to play in the Champions League eventually and the Europa League this year. I couldn't really say no. I know so many players that are here, not so much the first team, but the young lads. And another thing is that it's a massive project under Ange. It's something I want to be part of. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a massive Celtic fan, so I love him, and my whole family loves him too. I haven't really said this to be fair. He's also a massive factor because playing under a really good manager is really important for me. I've still got loads to learn because I know I'm only 18, so that's really important. So I think one of the key factors for us, Matt, that we were to some degree a little bit unaware of or unsure of was that when we did the show on Sunday now, with regards to the player being set to sign for Spurs, we were unsure if this was more of a club-focused signing, whether this was something that Ange Postecoglou had wanted, but it does appear like Ange did for a number of those signings over the previous summer. He's got on the phone, he's spoken to the player and convinced him that Spurs is the right place for him. How reassuring is that, Matt, given the fact that, as we've discussed already on this show and the previous shows that we've done, that this is a player that to some degree has split the fan base a little bit because it may be not the one that everybody wanted to follow Werner as an extension coming in, if that makes sense?
I think we need to start shifting away from the club signing mentality. And I know it's the trauma of having what we've seen for so long. And even as recently as Jed Spence, when Antonio Conte kind of threw the player and Daniel Levy under the bus with that quote in pre-season. But I think we can only look at what we've been shown, and what we've been shown in the last 12 or so months is Mickey van de Ven, Guglielmo Vicario, James Maddison as well, maybe to a lesser extent, but even Timo Werner are all players that have fit seamlessly into a Postecoglou system. Now we can talk about the quality, and especially in the case of Timo Werner, we can talk about the output and whether he was the right man to sign. But there's no doubt for me that he was the right profile. And even beyond of what we're seeing in the pitch, we know the phone call that Postecoglou had with James Maddison, where he told him, whether you're here or not, you're going to see a different Tottenham. We know with Vicario and Van de Ven, he had those conversations as well. So I think we have to pay attention to what we're seeing. And again, I know that kind of, I don't want to use the word trauma again, but the history is there where Daniel Levy has signed players that the managers don't want. But let's also look at what's happening off the pitch. 5 years ago, it was Steve Hitchen and Daniel Levy, and that was it. And they were the people who decided. But now it's Ange Postecoglou who, again, has essentially said himself that he looks at the profiles that he wants. He is involved with that recruitment team. He's not the one who goes into the negotiating room, but he outlines the type of player that he needs. We have Johan Lang and that entire department that he has overhauled who make these decisions. I think Daniel Levy, of course, at the end of the day, signs off with the checkbook, but he's nowhere near as involved as he has been in the past with these signings. So I think if we shift away from that club signing mentality and start to look at a deal with the merits that it actually is, I think we're going to get a much better look on the players that Tottenham are bringing in the future. And Archie Gray is for me a prime example of that, because the traits that he has, the qualities that he has, as Michael spoke about there, and as we discussed as well on Sunday, they all lend a very strong hand to a player who will fit in this Postecoglou system. He has the versatility. He can play in midfield. He can play at right back. And I wasn't aware he played a little bit further advanced there, as Michael said. He has the on-the-ball abilities. He has the off-the-ball abilities. He has the off-the-pitch abilities with the leadership and the mentality and the confidence and the brilliant team around him. So, yeah, for me, I think we are seeing Postecoglou signings for a Postecoglou team, and that Daniel Levy just isn't making those decisions anymore.
Yeah, it's really interesting points there. And I think, again, this is one that has definitely reared its head amongst the fan base. That, as we said, it was questioned heavily on Sunday as to who is really driving this signing. And I think we're going to come on to it very shortly in terms of the inside job of this one, that we know Johan Lange played a really key essential role in getting this player to Tottenham. And I think, Matt, you made this point. I think it's really important to bring it back up that, on Sunday morning, we saw a lot of, even Saturday evening, Sunday morning, we saw a lot of frustration. The fact that Spurs are missing out on yet another genuinely decent teenage player. I think, again, there was those same concerns that when they missed out on the likes of Gordon, of course, that went to Newcastle United at the time. I'm sure there's going to be other examples as well. Noosa, I think obviously that one did fall through in the end. But Spurs have been here before where they've been linked with a whole host of teenage players that have ended up really tripling, quadrupling their price rise. And here they are. They do get one over the line, and still we can't seem to please everyone, Matt. Is that just the nature of modern day football, Matty?
It's the nature of modern day football to some extent. I also think it's the nature of some people just looking for things to be negative about. I mean, over the last 12 months, I think the biggest frustrations Tottenham fans have had with our failings in recruitment have been seeing Alex Scott go to Bournemouth and seeing Adam Wharton go to Crystal Palace. And this is an identical deal. It's a high-performing young English championship midfielder who could potentially have a bright future ahead of him. And look, I'm not saying this is a 100% guarantee he's going to be a world beater. It's not. No move ever is. But if we're going to call out the failings, you can even go back a little bit further to Jared Bowen. And I hope Christina's not listening, because I'm going to mention that Jack Grealish didn't come to us. But it's we need to take these risks. We can't. We're not a team who has the pull or B, the finances to buy the ready-made players. There's a bridge that has to be gapped between us and between the very best if we want to get to the best. And the answer to that, as Chelsea are showing right now, isn't throwing money at every single problem and buying a Madueke who may have 30 goals a season in a league over here, and buying Nico Jackson who's 30 goals a season over here. Yes, there's some players like that you can buy, James Maddison being Exhibit A, but you also have to bring in these young players that can fill in the squad around those ready-made players that you have. So I think yeah, like I said, if we're going to be frustrated that we didn't get Scott and Morton, we can't be frustrated that we have got Archie Gray.
Totally agree. Can I just, if I can, just read out some of the quotes that we've had from Archie Gray upon joining Spurs? And can I just say, for our listeners on audio, you would have heard, of course, that interview with Archie Gray there that he gave to Spurs official earlier on today. A great interview. I think he came across ever so well in that, actually. And he went on, just to paraphrase, I'm going to give you a few of those quotes for our watching audience here. He said, I'm really excited. It's obviously a massive football club, an opportunity that I really couldn't turn down. I'm just really excited to play and get started with this team. It hasn't sunk in, if I've got to be honest with you. Obviously, I see myself as a midfielder. That's my ideal position, but I don't put myself down to one position. I think I'm versatile. I think I can play a lot in different positions, which is really effective when you've got so many competitions and so many games this upcoming season. You don't want to have too big a squad, and it can be really helpful for the team to be really versatile. I'm not bothered where I'm going to play. I'm just going to give absolutely everything, and that's all that really matters, to try and perform my absolute best here. There's so many huge names, and to be honest with you, I'm just grateful that I'll be able to train with them every day, and I want to show them why they've signed me and show my worth. Hopefully, I'll be able to get playing with them very, very soon, and I just can't wait to get out on that training pitch. He went on to say, I think there's loads of things that I've got to learn. I think some parts of the Premier League will suit me more than other parts of the Championship that would, but I think I'm ready for it, and the fitness side of it too. It suits my game so much, and the technical aspect really, really suits me down to the ground. I'm just hoping to play as many games as possible, and I can help push up the team on even more. If it's being competitive, I can see in that training every day, I'll push the players along with myself. We've got a really strong connection with the fans, which I think is really, really important. Obviously, that was massive at Leeds United. This club's got the same thing going on here with the fans, and that's really important to me. And I think it's the real nice key quote here. I want to create a strong bond with the fans and with the club, so I'm just really looking forward to doing that. I mean, look, Matt, as a first interview, kind of ticks every box that you want. Going to give everything, wants to create that bond with the fans. I mean, all he's got to do now is go on the pitch and show us, right? Because he said all the right things in that first interview.
Doing it on the pitch is the thing that he's good at. So
Of course.
I think we're off to a good start there. And again, just to make another comparison to Jack Clarke, I remember his first interview at Tottenham. It was about a minute and a half long, and he seemed nervous. He seemed tetchy, which isn't a criticism at all. Again, he was an 18-year-old kid coming in, but the difference with Archie Gray, where he like you said, he came across so well. He speaks with confidence. He speaks with a knowledge and understanding of the player that he can become and what he can bring to Tottenham. And I particularly liked when he said, I'm coming here to play Champions League football. Even though we're in the Europa League now, it's in his head. This is a Champions League team. This is a team he can help bring to that level. But yeah, it was a really, really brilliant interview, and I'm kind of looking into him a little bit more off the pitch over the last couple of days, just to kind of fully see what we're getting. It's a common thing. He's confident. He's charismatic, and again, another fit for Ange Postecoglou. That it matters what they're like off the pitch, and it's a box that Gray certainly takes in every capacity.
Oh, man. No, look, I've got to agree on that. Now, I want to also bring up the bit of the inside story here. The Athletic did a fabulous piece earlier today in which they gave a detailed analysis as to how Spurs got this deal over the line. Look, we're not going to sit here and read the full article. We shouldn't be doing that. But again, you can go and check that out, that's for sure, with regards to how it all came together. But just some real snippets from there that I think is really important to bring to light is that around April and May time, Dortmund really tried hard to make things happen to bring Gray to Germany. But then it decided that Gray was going to wait for further opportunities in England, and Spurs were a club that were at that time on the periphery looking at the deal. And it appeared from the moment the player final had ended, that interest in Gray began to build. There are admirers all around, not just in England, but as we've discussed, in Europe. And, one of the key men that were leading Spurs' charge for that was that of Johan Lange, who essentially has revamped the last 12 months of Spurs from a recruitment perspective, and is now a much stronger emphasis, as we know, on data and identifying targets. Now, Gray's arrival does continue that trend that Spurs have done throughout the previous windows of the likes of Radu Dragusin of 22, Lucas Bergvall of 18, and Matt has touched upon this point now. Spurs are trying really hard to go and sign what they arguably believe to be some of the best technical players of a young age in world football. They are genuinely going for that. Lange really is the man that the hard work has been done behind this deal. He was in daily contact with Gray's camp for weeks as Spurs pursued the transfer, with Daniel Levy joining him in putting those hours in to get this deal over the line. Now, as you guys will know, with regards to the player himself, he's been given an assurance that he will get game time. That's despite, at the moment, a fierce-looking Spurs in midfield. They've got Maddison, Pat Matassar, Rodrigo Bentancur, Oliver Skipp, Yves Bissouma, Bergvall coming in. You've got Højbjerg who's expected to leave, but it's a real plethora of a midfield there, Matt, that he's got to get his teeth into. and one that it appears, again, when you read this article, he's most certainly backing himself to do so. I mean, that's what you want though, Matt, isn't it? You want these players that are going to come in, not be fearful of competition and believe in their ability that they can get game time in the biggest league in English football, of course.
Absolutely. And I think we have to give credit again to Tottenham's recruitment team here, because on Saturday, again, when it felt as though Archie Gray would be heading to Brentford, I, like many others, was frustrated that maybe we'd missed out on that, a player that we knew Tottenham were heavily interested in. And I said the onus was on whatever Archie Gray wants, which I think we can tell from the ground, the team around him, what was always going to be game time and the best move for his development. The onus was on the Tottenham recruitment team to present a pathway. Archie Gray isn't going to be the core of our midfield this season. He's not going to start 38 Premier League games and carry us to Europa League final. I think he will feature quite a bit. But it was on Spurs, it was on Postecoglou and Johan Lange to present that pathway and explain to him why Tottenham was a better destination than Brentford, and they managed to do that. And the most interesting part is just how close Gray was to actually joining Brentford, that he went there for his medical. He got a presentation from Thomas Frank on the future of Gray at Brentford, the future of Brentford as a football club. And ultimately that night, Gray contacted Leeds United and said, "Can you reject their bid, please? I want to go to the other side of London," because Tottenham had just managed to convince him with that. And his confidence in being able to get that game time, regardless of the assurances he's been given, I think again just speaks to the mentality that he has because of those options that you said. My only concern would be, I think Gray as an individual alone can get game time in the Tottenham team. I think Lucas Bergvall as an individual alone can get time in that Tottenham team. But embedding the two of them together into this team, I think, will be quite tough, because there's not going to be many fixtures in our calendar next season where you can put both of them in there. There's also going to be a lot of games where we need to have a more assured, more experienced midfield where you can't really play either of them from the start anyway. So there is going to be a struggle there for the management team to get them in there. But that, I think, then is where the development and the work they do off the pitch will come to the fore. And even if it is less game time than Gray or Bergvall had planned for, that there will still be that development with that new coaching staff that's come in and getting to play in training with the likes of Bentancur and Basuma, and even Sarr, despite the fact that he's still young, is still a very, very talented player.
Yeah, also, Matt, just to go back on that, what you said about that Sunday, making that point about Brentford missing out on the player. Brentford have had some real unlucky nature in the last couple of seasons with missing out on players. They've been, of course, very close to getting Brennan Johnson, who's similar. So, of course, Archie Gray decided to opt for the North London side rather than West London side. And you look at the fact, they were very close to Mudryk, to Noosa as well. And it does appear, people criticise Spurs a lot in regards to why they're looking at Brentford targets. We know Brentford also have this data-driven model that Brighton also adopt and follow. And look, whatever you say, Spurs at the moment are getting the better of some of their rivals in relation to not direct rivals in terms of comparison of league positions, but rivals in terms of how they are analysing the data. And look, we know where we want Spurs to be. We don't want Spurs to be, rivaling the likes of Brentford and Brighton. Don't get me wrong. We want Spurs to be up towards the top of the Premier League, fighting the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, of course. I don't want to put Chelsea in there for now, but City, of course, in there. So we have to hope that what Spurs are doing in terms of this model is going to pay off, because we have seen, Matt, in the last 20 years, so many different kinds of philosophical models Spurs have followed under Daniel Levy. We've had buying players young, we've had buying players old, we've had buying players that have had a bit of experience, we've had win-now managers, we've had not win-now managers. At some point, Matt, you've got to land on a model and decide to follow it. I mean, that's key, isn't it, in what we're now seeing in modern football?
And I think the Brentford-Brighton model is the best way to go with that. And look, I think on the face of it, we're a team who wants to be in the Champions League winning trophies, and Brentford are a team who, when our last season maybe had a bit of a struggle in staying up in the league, but are, I would say now, an established Premier League side. And the reason they went from a League One, League Two kind of trampoline side to a Premier League side is because of that recruitment model. And in the last 6-7 years, they bought Ollie Watkins from Exeter for 7 million. They got Neil Maupay, and I know we have some previous with Neil Maupay at Tottenham Hotspur, but they got him from 2 million for 2 million from France. They bought Ezri Konsa from Charlton for 3 million, and he looks like he could be starting a Euros quarter-final at the end of this week if Gahey isn't fit. They bought Ben Rama for 1.7 million. They bought Brian Mbomo for 6.5 million, David Raya for 3.5 million, and it even goes to 4 years ago, they got Ivan Toney for 5.6 million. The recruitment at Brentford is phenomenal. I think there's been a little bit of a drop off in the last couple of years, which I think is natural when they've gone from being the kind of underdog, low budget team, to trying to scale that recruitment up. But I think Tottenham are a team who are in that position where they can take that scaled model, if that's what you want to call it, and start from there and try to go even further with it. So if this is the model that we're following, and we can go on for ages about the players that Brighton have brought in from unheard of teams, unheard of leagues. If this is the model that we're going to follow, there's going to be a decent amount of success with those players that we're bringing in.
Yeah, totally agree. Look, what we are going to do in relation to Gray for a second, we are going to take a little bit of a back step on him. We're going to just discuss where we are in terms of a bit of a transfer roundup. It's been a day where, again, rumours have hit the headlines. We will be telling you we have got a special show to bring to you this week with a really great journalist that has been on this show before that you guys love. Me and Matt will be joining him later on in the week. The train of transfer shows does not stop here for me and Matty. We're going to keep on bringing them to you on Last Word on Spurs. But just to give you an update as where we stand with regards to the latest rumour mill for Spurs. And we understand from our very own Paul O'Keefe, who will be joining us very, very soon, myself and Matt, on Last Word on Spurs, that Spurs are showing a firm interest in, and pronounce this, I've got it wrong, Matt, please tell me. I believe it's pronounced Desire Do. Matt, have I got that right or wrong? Please tell me now.
I'm not a fluent French speaker, so I don't want to correct you and then also be wrong myself. So I think that's what we're going to go with for today.
We're going to go with Desire Do. Now, this guy is 19 years old. He has been linked with Manchester United. He's widely considered to be one of the most talented prospects in European football, having made his senior breakthrough in Rennes in 2022. Now, the player has since gone on to make 57 Liga games for the club, scoring 7 times, and is talented enough to be able to play in a multiple number of positions, including midfield as well as out wide. He notched up 4 goals and 6 assists in 43 appearances in all competitions, as Rennes finished 10th in the table last season, while 6 of those outings came in the Europa League. I mean, Matt, look, another midfielder. You know, you'd have to think on this basis, Matt, we're going to have some kind of clear out if we keep on recruiting midfielders. I mean, this kind of player, I'm going to say to you, I don't know a huge amount about him myself. From the eye looking in, is this a player that you'd be screaming out for Spurs to target this summer for you?
I think I've been lucky with our recruitment in the last 6 or so months that there's been some players there that I know quite well in Archie Gray and even Antonio Nusa back in January. I can't say it's similar with this player. I think he's kind of more suited to playing off the left, and the underlying numbers suggest he has traits that we lack massively in our team at the moment. Number one being a player who can take on a defender, get to the byline and put the ball into the box. Timo Werner probably the best we have in that regard, and Brennan Johnson to some extent when he plays out on the right as well. So I think there's a gap that's being filled there straight away that he can do that. Again, I'm not going to go on and on because I don't know too much about the player, but there's been a lot of interest from around Europe. But I think in France there's 2 players this summer that are being seen as massive players for the future. One of them is Lenny Yoro, the centre-back for Lille, and this guy is the other one. Arsenal, United and Newcastle have all kind of had a look at him as well as other teams across the continent. So it's not going to be one that immediately fixes all of our problems in the first team. So how realistic it is that we're going to go for a 40 million Archie Gray and a potentially 30 million Desire Do this window. I'm not sure how much they go hand in hand, but it's hard not to be excited by a player that everyone seems to want to get on their squad list.
Yep. Let's discuss another name that Paul O'Keefe brought to us Spurs fans earlier today, and that's another player that they've previously edged away from that is now back, understood consideration-wise, and that's Pedro Neto. Now, despite Neto's injury issues this season, Wolves are reportedly not going to lower their asking price and will not entertain offers below a reported figure. Now, Wolves are simply backing up that reasoning because they negotiated a record 53 million last summer for Matheus Nunes. That was last September. Now, Neto, 24-year-old winger, he managed 2 goals and 9 assists in the previous season. That's despite suffering 2 hamstring injuries. He is viewed to Wolves still as a key asset and won't be easy to prime him away. But as Paul tells us, look, it's a player that is back under consideration for Spurs. Matt, Pedro Neto, would you be in favour of seeing him at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium next season?
No, is the short answer. He is an immensely talented, incredible footballer who I think on the basis of it fixes so many of our problems. He's missed 100 games of football in the last 3 years, and that's outrageous. Those 2 hamstring injuries you mentioned, he hurt his ankle the year before that, and his knee kept him out for almost a year. The year before that again. if we were getting him without the injuries, it would be one of the moves of the summer for any team that could attract him. But with the physical demands of an Ange Postecoglou side, it's just not a risk worth taking, in my opinion. It's going to take a lot of money to get him out of Wolves, and rightly so. They've got a huge asset. He's got a contract. They should milk that for every penny that they can. I just hope it won't be Tottenham who's giving them that money.
Okay, fair. Look, again, can't argue on those points there. Matt has raised regards to Neto. Joke saying that Neto would actually pull a hamstring before he even has his medical, given the nature of his injuries last season. Again, we'll leave that one open to interpretation. We won't comment on that. We don't want to get a fine on here. Go on, Matty.
I'd also actually question whether he would pass the medical, even if it did get to that point with his hamstring, especially 2 injuries this season, missed 19 games. You know, it's I'm sure with the amount of money that we got into a deal for Pedro Neto, that it would be an extremely thorough check. And whether he passed that or not, who knows?
Absolutely fair. Look, at the moment, there were links, obviously, earlier in the window that we could see 𝐼𝐸 𝐂𝐨𝐵 link up with former Spurs head coach Antonio Conte at Napoli. That has quieted down for now, but what we do understand is that 𝐂𝐨𝐵 is one of several options being explored by Borussia Dortmund in case their move for Brighton's Pascal Gross falls through. We know the midfielder is keen to leave this summer with just 1 year left on his contract. We also know that Pierre took the decision to actually change representatives during last season with the view to being ahead of the game to move this summer. I presume, Matt, I don't know where you're seeing this now, we should get some fair acceleration on this in the next week or so. I can't imagine, I don't know if you agree, Matt, I can't see Pierre going on tour with Spurs, given the nature of the fact he's looking to secure a move away. Would you be surprised if he comes back and goes on tour with us?
Yeah, I'd be extremely surprised. I think we've seen the ruthlessness of Ange Postecoglou in situations like this. He's not going to drag him along just for the sake of it. I think it's best for all parties that 𝐂𝐨𝐵 goes, and I'm not going to sit here and say 𝐂𝐨𝐵 is not a good footballer. I think he is a very talented player and has been crucial to us at times over the last couple of years. And I think we'd be the few tumultuous years we had under Conte, Jose Mourinho, and Nuno would have been very different in a negative way without 𝐂𝐨𝐵. But he just doesn't fit what we're doing right now. He's not gonna succeed in this team. And I think a move to Dortmund or a move to Napoli to partner with Conte, wherever it goes, it'd be a good move for him. And I'm sure he'd be successful when he does go there. But yeah, I think we've seen the last of him in a Spurs kit.
Yeah, that's fair. Look, we also understand that negotiations between AC Milan and Tottenham for Emerson Royale now, according to Damasio, have entered the red-hot phase. What does that mean, the red-hot phase? I can see Matt there chuckling away in the background. It will still take around 3 to 4 days in order to finish the signing. However, AC Milan hope they are now going to conclude this one, and they are pushing really, really hard. Matt, in all your time around football, which is getting longer and longer, bless you, have you heard of that term, the red-hot phase?
I definitely haven't. That's a new one. I'm trying to refresh my memory here, and the strangest headline that I've heard. I do love when there's these reports in a different language that are translated, because sometimes it's a dodgy translation, sometimes it's just a really weird phrase in a different language that doesn't translate very well. There was, I think it was a Barcelona player a couple of years back when a Spanish report was translated, and it said that this manager at a different team has a romantic interest in this player, which he may well do, but I'm sure that's not what the newspaper is trying to report. So I do adore these these strange translations.
That's a good point there. A red hot face, maybe just had a really hot curry. What do you reckon, Matt?
Look, we can't rule it out. We can't rule it out. But I think an Emerson move to AC Milan is inevitable. The interest has been there for quite a while.
Yep.
Doesn't have a place at Spurs anymore. And I think similar to 𝐂𝐵𝐵, I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't think he fits what Tottenham need at the moment. And I wish Emerson the best of luck.
Yep. We did get then a more direct update from Fabrizio Romano, who says there is contact between the two football clubs, but there's still no agreement in place. Talks will continue. Fabrizio not the time to go with the red hot phrase at the moment. It has got a bit quiet, Matty, actually, on the front of Jacob Ramsey, a player that was linked with Spurs back end of last week. It appeared it's one that they do like. We understand now it believes that move would be dependent on Giovanni Lo Celso being part of any move. I mean, can you see Spurs going back on the radar for Ramsey, or is this rumour going to peter out? What are you standing on that one for you?
It's difficult to tell, because I'm not quite sure what kind of faction of a recruitment he'd fall into. If he's a ready-made number 10 that we want for next season, maybe he could have been a similar one to Archie Gray, where it's just if an opportunity would arise that we go and get that done this window. But there's also a lot of players of a similar profile that were being linked with, of course, 𝐅𝐸𝐂𝐨𝐵 being one of them as well. But that, again, in the same way, Tottenham could have tested the waters and not liked what they heard back from Aston Villa. And as we know, they have multiple targets. They could have moved on somewhere else. But I think it's impossible to rule anything out with Tottenham in the window at the moment. So maybe it's one we revisit, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we just don't hear about it anymore.
Yeah, and just a follow-on for you, Max. I know it's a defender that you love. I can see on social media you're trying to steer this one in kind of acceleration. I wonder if Matt is going to guess the same name I'm guessing. Italian. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking about.
Who's the name,
Ricardo Calafiori. What a player.
For that reason alone, what a name that is, it would be worth signing. I mean, I know there was points earlier, I've seen obviously around social media, there's been questions saying, well, look, with the nature of the defenders we've got there, can you really bring somebody like that that's going to genuinely get first team regular football? Do you think he could still get decent amount of game time? Again, Europa League football next season, Spurs going fair in the cups. And you consider as well, Matt, look at last season with the injuries that we had, there would have been room for a defender to come in and have a consistent 3-4 months at the club. So is this one a genuine target, you feel? Or, again, it's one that is doing a lot of agent talk and running around the media at the moment?
I think it's a genuine target, but it's just not a realistic one, unfortunately. He's a fantastic footballer and was a really important part of that Bologna side that was able to get into the Champions League for the first time in their history under Thiago Motta last season. The biggest challenge I think we have in this is that Thiago Motta has gone on to take over at Juventus, and unsurprisingly wants to bring Calafiori with him, but also from an English perspective, Chelsea and Arsenal are interested there too. And I think they can just offer him more game time than we can. Romero and Van de Ven have already definitively established themselves as the best two centre-backs we have at the club. And if we're watching the performances of Radu Dragusin at Euro 2024, if we ignore the second goal that the Netherlands scored tonight, he's been absolutely immense, and I think is staking his claim even further to get in that team. As we know from his agent, he thinks he deserves to be starting. But yeah, it's just a dream, the Calafiori one. Although I would say a month ago, Archie Gray was just a dream for me as well. So anything can change, but I put the chances of this one happening very, very low, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, look, I agree on this one. Look, that is your comprehensive roundup as where we stand in this transfer window. A reminder, me and Matt are going to be joined by, again, another esteemed journalist on your way this upcoming Thursday. They're going to be week upon week what we've got planned for you on Last Word On Spurs. We're trying to keep you busy. We're trying to accelerate that window for you, even if Spurs are going to maybe try and slow it down and they've got two over the line. I think, look, it's right. The show does belong to Archie, so we're going to close it on some lovely closing notes from players and managers that have actually worked with Archie as we look to wrap this show up. This first one from Daniel Farker, a man that's managed this guy, obviously, of course, over the last season. He said, look, all the praise has to go to Archie. You can work with a player. You can essentially back the player and trust the player, but you can bring him to the door. He has to make that step. He's done that unbelievably with maturity and consistency. He's outstanding for an 18-year-old lad. He's incredibly grounded, humble, and has good habits. They are doing fantastically well with him as a family, and I wish him all the very best. Now, interestingly, when he was asked about swapping Gray for anybody, he turned around and said, look, I know he's not the finished product and can make mistakes or get nervous or overexcited, but I'm struggling to criticise any of my players, and that includes Archie. I would not swap Archie for anyone in this league. He has more potential than any player that I've seen. Jesse March, his former manager, I consider Archie at 16 years old to be a first-team player. He has cleverness, the flexibility to play in multiple positions. He can run. He sees things quickly. He's aggressive on the ball. He's fearless. I think he is the total package. Ethan Ampadu, who played alongside him, said, look, honestly, it's pretty easy. This guy makes the game easy. I really do believe he's a top talent. And I think what showed it is he's got that base and he'll kick on even further. Hopefully, we can learn stuff together. But as we know with Ethan, that never happened. And as we can see, the player will be departing. There's some really lovely comments on him, as we see, Matt, from players and managers that have worked with his kid. Some real high hope for the future. And, I think a closing one to end on. This is Archie's own words, if I can. My childhood dream was to win the Champions League, captain England at senior level, and win a Ballon d'Or. I'm still really young, so there's a long way to go before any of that happens, but I believe I've got the ability to do so. This is a kid that is really backing himself right for the very, very top. And, with that attitude, with that sole focus, it's a player that, when you've got that attitude inside you, a player tends to get as close as they can be to that next level, Matty.
Absolutely. And again, like I said earlier, it's just what's within this Tottenham team and what we're trying to build. Those players have that belief. They have that They have that desire to succeed, and for a player that young to feel confident to come out and say, I want the absolute biggest that there is in the world of football, with the Ballon d'Or, with the Champions League. He's dreaming big, but he's also dreaming something he believes he can reach, and that's really important. And one of the biggest praises I could give to Archie Gray from the perspective of a former manager is that Marcelo Bielsa, who we all know as an innovator and a game changer within football in so many different ways. Without him, we wouldn't have had Mauricio Pochettino before 12 months ago, and different players that he gave Aymeric Laporte a debut when he was only a youngster in Spain. There's a long list of players you could add, and he put Archie Gray on a Premier League bench at 15 years of age. I think that speaks volumes about the player that we're getting. So yeah, the future is bright with Archie Gray at Spurs.
A final quick on Matt. I hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot here.
Uh-oh.
What do you now, on the back of this second signing, I know we're normally asking the journalists these questions, what do you feel now is what's between now and the rest of the window? What does Spurs need to do, for your opinion, to be fully equipped for the upcoming season? What else do they need, in your opinion?
We do need a winger, whether it's a Doué or something else. We need someone who can take on a man down the line and put the ball into the box on a more consistent basis than Timo Werner. Timo Werner has, and also one that can probably be a more permanent option than Timo Werner. And there are a number of options there. We need a bit more creativity in that number 10 role, because at the moment the depth behind Maddison is Dejan Kulusevski, but ideally he'd be out on the right where he belongs. We need to add depth to the fullback positions, which I thought maybe Archie Gray was going to be at right back, but I think we're back in the conversation for Kyle Walker-Peters or for Harold Geertruida at Feyenoord. So there is still a lot of work to do, but we're off to a good start. And I know I say it every window, and I know often I'm wrong, but I'm optimistic for the couple of months that are ahead, and I'm very, very excited to be spending it on here with you, Ricky, and the many guests that we're going to have over the transfer window.
Oh, man, Matty, I can't thank you enough. Matt, for those that don't know where to find you, and always with me every week on the sofa at the moment, Matt, where can they find you with what we've got to come? Where can they find the wonderful Matty Hayes? Please go and check him out. Matt with some brilliant views, stats and opinions and all things Spurs. If you're not following Matt, what are you doing with your life? Matt, where can they find you?
I'm on X at Matt Hayes THFC. Like I always say, there's a lot of nonsense on there, but I like to think that within the plethora of nonsense, there's a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of insight into Tottenham or the wider footballing world. I also, you might find me on YouTube as well on the Transfermarkt page. I made my hosting debut on there today, and we spoke about Archie Gray. So if you haven't had enough Archie Gray content, there's some there in the Transfermarkt English page as well. But the main place you'll find me is here, reminding you all to vote for Last Word on Spurs in the Football Content Awards.
Look at that. Look at that. Even like seamlessly leaving his lips there. Look at that. Amazing. Like I say, Matty, thank you so much. A reminder, you can vote for Last Word on Spurs now for the Football Content Awards of 2024. That vote is now open. You can nominate us by clicking that QR code. And for our listeners on audio, you can go to the link in the description box. Type Last Word on Spurs and the best podcast in the Premier League. We greatly appreciate all your support. And like I say, it's going to be a busy, busy summer. And me and Matt will try and keep up with you. We've got Paul O'Keefe back with us very, very soon. Me and Matty will be back for you for that show in the coming days, fingers crossed. I want to say a massive thank you to Matty. Matty, thank you so much again to our watching audience, to Michael from the Square Ball. Wasn't he brilliant? Wasn't he great for all that knowledge of Archie Gray? From myself, from Matt, from you wonderful watching audience and listeners, thank you so much for your support from Last One on Spurs. Please keep safe, keep well. Spurs have got their second signing of the summer. And as always,